India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, the very symbol of imperialism, celebrated its freedom. Mahatma Gandhi was the father of independence. His economic ideal was a simple India of self-sufficient villages. Pandit Nehru, the first Prime Minister, wanted to industrialize and combine British parliamentary democracy with Soviet-style central planning.
In the 1950s, India was the mecca of all economists. You talk of any economist in the world, and they were advising the Indian government. And the advice was, you must have a state-led model of industrial growth. The public sector must occupy what came to be called the commanding heights of the economy. And that's why steel, coal, machine tools, capital goods, all the areas of heavy industry were in the public sector and not in the private sector.
Nehru put his faith in technology.
Nehru was a rational thinker, and he wanted to apply science and technologies to solve the great mass poverty that prevailed at the time of independence.
Under Nehru, central planning became a form of science.
Nehru was always recruiting intellectuals in India on his side in the cause of planning. And there was this genius statistician, Mahalanobis, who was head of the Indian Statistical Institute.
Nehru asked Mahalanobis to think about how to plan an economy. The brilliant Mahalanobis succeeded in expressing the entire Indian economy in a single mathematical formula.
Let YT equal national income, CT equal consumption, and KT equal investment at time into open bracket 1 plus lambda k beta k close bracket minus 1 are fractions of investment allocated to industries producing capital goods, that is K sector, and consumer goods, that is C sector respectively. We shall write.
People believed this perfect mathematical model could be applied in a less than perfect world.
And at that time, Mahalanobis' model was hailed as one of the pioneering mathematical models for planning in a mixed economy. And that made Mahalanobis very influential.
India became the model of economic development for newly independent nations. Across the developing world, socialism, planning, government control, regulation, and ownership, these became the gospel. All over Africa, people looked to socialism to lead them out of poverty. Across South America, governments chose state control as the way to modernize. The apparent success of communist countries like the Soviet Union and China seemed to show the way. Like the Soviet Union, India had used central planning to industrialize its peasant economy and conquer poverty. Now India, like government-dominated economies all over the world, was running into difficulty.
The government of India went into business in a big way, and they decided to control whatever was there in the private sector also as firmly and fiercely as they could.
The British Raj was gone. Now people were subjected to the permit Raj, because everything needed a government permit. India became a byword for red tape and bureaucracy. Businessmen found it almost impossible to get things done.
It used to take us about 12 to 24 months and about 50 visits to Delhi to get a license to import a computer worth $1,500.
Since it was impossible to work with the system, people learned to work around it.
Every license, every permit was procured by corrupt means.
A bribe.
Well, bribe is the simpler word, I suppose.
Self-sufficiency was India's ideal. To protect its own manufacturing industry, India shut out foreign imports.
Because of this protected market, the Indian people were being given shoddy goods and services at very high prices. Enterprise was stifled and growth was crippled.
The economic environment was simply not conducive to efficiency or profitability. We were in a shortage economy. My father waited 15 years to buy a car.
Take India's beloved Ambassador car. It is made by Hindustan Motors, which started manufacturing in the same year as Japan's Toyota. 50 years later, Toyota makes 5 million cars a year. Hindustan sells 18,000 Ambassadors, and still to the same design.
If you have a controlled economy cut off from the rest of the world by infinite protection, nobody has any incentive to innovate, nobody has any incentive to increase productivity, to bring new ideas.
Overprotected, over-administered, overplanned. The Permit Raj was quite literally a brake on the Indian economy.
Why?
The collapse of the Soviet Union reverberated round the world. For India, it was the end of a role model. The ideal of central planning shattered.
This was a telling proof that a command type of economy was not as secure as we had thought. Therefore, the collapse of the Soviet Union was a major factor which influenced thinking on economic reforms in our country as in other countries.
Planned by bureaucrats and cut off from world trade, India's economy had grown stagnant, inefficient, and indebted. In 1991, India stared bankruptcy in the face.
We were borrowing heavily. We had to mortgage our gold deposits. Our growth rate had come to virtually zero. All this added to a very enormous crisis.
In the midst of the crisis, the economist Manmohan Singh received an urgent call from the new Prime Minister. He found himself appointed Finance Minister.
Well, I said to him that we are on the verge of a collapse. Our foreign exchange reserves, when I took over, were no more than $1 billion. That is roughly equal to 2 weeks' imports. The argument was quite simple. We were in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. It was time to think big.
To the horror of his own political party, the Prime Minister gave the green light for free market reform.
Well, the rank and file of the party was simply bewildered. They did resist the kind of changes that we brought about. But we presented them the hard facts that unless all this was done, the economy would simply collapse.
India's Permit Raj was ended. State control was reduced, government subsidies were cut, tariffs and trade barriers reduced, and regulatory licenses eliminated.
We got government off the backs of the people of India, particularly off the backs of India's entrepreneurs. We introduced more competition to release the innovative spirits which were always there in India. The economy turned around much sooner and much more deeply than I had anticipated. Indian industry boomed. We created record number of jobs. We were able to control inflation, and the economy was growing at the rate of 7% per annum, so our critics were completely silenced.
Watch all of Commanding Heights online at pbs.org. This enhanced netcast links to an interactive time map, country reports, economic data, and important full-length interviews about the future world economy. Commanding Heights video set and book are available from WGBH Boston Video. To place an order, please call 1-800-255-9424.